Welcome to Life in LA, a look at people and places in Lower Arkansas, our LA. Lower Arkansas is made up of the 15 southernmost counties in the state. Join us each week as we talk to some of the people who make this part of the world such an interesting place to live. And now, let's join Life in LA with our host, Steve Ford.
And yet another version of Life in LA. I have a very special guest with us today. I forgot her name. No, I didn't forget. She was asked to speak at the senior adult gathering here at Central Baptist Church. I'm happy to welcome to the program Mercedes Ray. Mercedes, welcome.
Thank you.
I bet you're on podcasts all the time.
Not all the time, no, but I'm excited to be on this one.
Oh, yeah. You gave a great talk and such a timely topic on how to remember things.
It's tough.
Yeah, it is. Well, before we dig in, tell us a little bit about who you are and a little bit about your family.
Well, I married a sweet little South Arkansas boy, and he grew up here in Magnolia, and once we had our kids, we decided that we really wanted to make this our home. We weren't sure we wanted to do that until we had those boys, and boy, when we had them, now we just decided right away Magnolia was the place.
But I can't detect a South Arkansas accent as you're speaking.
If you ask my family from Iowa if I have a South Arkansas accent, they will tell you they are certain that I do.
You have adopted some speech patterns.
Yes, it must come and go.
So you're from Iowa originally?
I grew up in Iowa, in southwest Iowa.
The great Midwest.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. But it's really cold. So I picked Arkansas on purpose.
Mm-hmm. How did you get down here in the first place?
I was on a mission team. And
you were on mission to the Arkansans?
I was. We traveled, actually I was in a band and I sang, and we traveled and did youth ministry. Traveled from Minnesota and Wisconsin all the way down through the central part of the United States into Alabama and Mississippi and Louisiana, and so we spent a lot of time in Arkansas, and we went through Conway several times, so that was actually where I ended up. And then
was that while you were in college?
It was after college, so I had just finished college. You know, people think that you need to know exactly what you're going to do when you're done with college, but you just don't always. And so God said, "This is what I want you to do," and that was because I needed to meet this sweet little Magnolia boy.
Isn't it funny, the people that come into our lives that change everything about us?
Really, really, really is.
Yeah. So tell us what you're doing professionally these days.
Well, I am a social worker. I'm a licensed social worker. I have a master's degree in social work from UALR. And I am currently the program director at SAU for the social work program. It's part of the College of Liberal and Performing Arts, and I really enjoy the group of people that I work with there. I also have a private practice, and so I do a little bit of counseling. Not as much now that I'm at SAU full-time, but I still do a little bit of counseling here in town also.
Well, it was fitting that I came down to hear the talk, and I forgot that my wife needed the car, and I just drove it down here like a big dummy. Why is it that people forget stuff all the time?
We do. I think a lot of it is because we stay very busy, and I think that is definitely one of the reasons that we forget. I think the reason we were talking about this particular topic at LLL today is because as we age, biologically, our memories just are not as solid, and we just have to work a little harder to keep those parts of our brain active and healthy.
You mentioned, well, we hear that diagnosis tossed around a lot, and I think most of us struggle with attention deficit disorder. You mentioned, though, that we're trying to do so many things these days.
We're way too busy. Our brains were just created to do one thing at a time, to really focus on one task that was in front of us at a time. And we have demands from so many different places coming at us. And I think we try to do too much, just more than what our brains were originally designed to do. And so the more we can focus on that one task in front of us and eliminate some of those distractions, the better our attention and memory will actually be.
You know, they've done so much research into the brain from a physical standpoint, but people still don't have a total grasp on how it works.
It's so complex.
It's still a mystery up there.
It really is. It really is. God just designed our brains in such cool ways to function in this like great big working order that is how that is designed. And I think when we try to get our brains to do things in a way that they weren't designed to do those things, it just complicates things and it makes us forget. We forget, we lose things, we get distracted, we just can't piece it all together.
It's easy to put things in your brain. We take in things all day long.
We do.
And so many sources. You mentioned I wish we could throw our smartphones away.
Into the river. I'd really like to throw them into the river some days.
Yeah.
But yes, our brains take in that information. It's called encoding. And so we take in all of that information, and our brains sort that out into short-term and long-term storage places. And short-term, what we had for breakfast or what we're going to do in 5 minutes. And then longer-term, what we did as a kid or what was important to us in school.
So the trick is retrieving that's gone into either long-term or short-term storage. And you mentioned there were some surprising things that you mentioned that can help us with our memory.
Interestingly enough, a lot of the things that we would do to try to make us happy people are the same things that can help our memories be solid.
Are you telling me being happy can help me have a better memory?
It really can. Isn't that strange?
But if I had a better memory, I would probably, I don't know, maybe I wouldn't be happier. It depends on what you remember.
It depends on whether or not you get frustrated with yourself about all the things that you have forgotten.
Remember the things you wish you had forgotten.
Right. Yes.
But being happy, you said that can help you with your memory and also your diet.
As a therapist, we talk to people about doing things to like increase your happy chemicals. You try to increase the serotonin or dopamine that is like going on in your body and that floods into your brain. Things like the protein in your diet or sunshine and exercise and spending time with people that you like enjoy and doing fun things.
Did you see the 4 desserts that I had at the end of LLL? They sure made me happy.
I know.
But I don't think they were the right kind of foods.
They have a lot of that refined sugar, which makes us happy in the moment, but not always happy long term.
Yeah, we're not going to chase that refined sugar.
No.
I've heard a lot about that.
The proteins in our diet give us a little more long-term serotonin and happy chemicals, dopamine, and the happy chemicals
Things
for
like
our brain.
Nuts and fish and chicken and that help. Cheese. There it is. I wrote CH, but I couldn't remember what CH stood for.
I would rather have that block of cheese probably than 14 pieces of fish.
Yeah, and the healthy fats. What are some healthy fats?
So avocados have good healthy fats in them. And if you are maybe sauteing some vegetables in an oil, maybe use olive oil or coconut oil, those kinds of things, I think at one point, even the difference between butter and margarine, and we are now seeing that maybe butter is actually better for us to use in moderation for some of our foods. But to use those things in moderation in our diet helps the synapses in our brain to connect. So they need something to stick to. Without our synapses in our brain having something to kind of stick to, then they misfire and we don't think as clearly as what we would need to.
Oh, yeah. I've got a lot of weeds growing in my synaptic pathways up there if I could get them all cleared out. You said that smiling impacts how does smiling impact our memory?
Impact your memory? Yeah, because when we do the fun things and we have fun doing the things we enjoy and with the people that we enjoy, we want to remember that activity. So we store that differently.
It's encoded differently.
Right, and it's easier to retrieve because it is something that really brought us joy.
I wrote this quote down: the things I do for fun can help me with my memory.
They can.
And you brought a couple of games, and we played some games.
And it could be that fun for you is gardening, or fun for you is spending time with, kids that just make you laugh and giggle, or fun for you could be watching a really funny show or a movie because it just brings back good memories. But yeah, those fun things.
I've noticed there are a couple of things that negatively impact my memory. One of them is stress. When I'm stressed out, and probably most people, if you're stressed out, you have trouble remembering.
And the chemicals in your brain function differently then.
Oh.
So the stress causes you angst. It causes the stress and the discomfort in your brain. And so it takes more of those happy chemicals to keep you going every day. And so your body kind of gets depleted. And so then you need more, the same happy chemicals that you need to make your memory work are getting depleted because of the stress. So we try to
And when we enter that fight or flight mode, we're often not thinking clearly anyway.
Right.
You got more of those juices flowing around. The other thing that can negatively impact our memory, and I see this, is in sleeping well. How does sleep affect our memory?
Because the same thing happens. You restore your body when you sleep. And if you are not getting good quality sleep or enough sleep, then you're not producing, your body isn't able to reproduce those chemicals for your brain that you need. And all of those things help us to not just be happy, but then to think clearly, and that will in turn help our memory.
And unfortunately, the older we get, I think the harder it is to get a good night of sleep.
Yes, to get
weight
the solid
and stress
sleep.
and food and so many things impact, and I'm talking about me right now. And if you don't get a good night of sleep, I believe it was Coleridge in the Rime of the Ancient Mariner who said, "Oh, sleep, it is a blessed thing, beloved from pole to pole."
Absolutely.
And we forget that we need that. And some people try to operate on fewer hours.
And some of us operate really well for short periods of time on fewer hours. But over the long term, that takes a toll on your body and then ultimately affects all the different systems. So one of the things that we can do when we're trying to reduce our stress or get more sleep is something that has been proven to help us with memory anyway. We can take time to just pray, be peaceful, meditate a little, just calm your brain a little before you try to sleep at night, and then you might sleep better, and in turn, that then helps
My
your memory.
smartphone tells me about an hour before bedtime to put it down, and I'm not smart enough to listen
put it down.
to it.
Yes, those smartphones, they're so helpful in some ways and so
But the
hurtful
brain
in
is
others.
still churning right up until bedtime.
Right, and so reading a book or writing just a little something. Even if you're not reading intensely, you're just like sifting through maybe a picture book or a photo album or something that's maybe just got something that, there again, you enjoy. It just is different in calming that brain down. That blue screen on your phone, if we look at that until we go to sleep, it disrupts our sleep cycles.
Even the color does, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You mentioned some other positive things, and you touched on them just now, that can help us with our memory. Writing. What about writing? How does that help?
Writing does something with connecting our words and our language to our thoughts and how we process all of that. So actually, for a lot of us, writing helps us to remember things. If we write it down, we remember it differently. But writing also makes us recall our language and the knowledge that we have, and maybe even some of our emotions and how we feel about things, so we can write about good things. I encourage people to write about good things that happen to them throughout their day, or like just good qualities about themselves, and you do that at night before you go to sleep, so that those are the things you're thinking about as you try to sleep, not some of the stressors of the day.
Remember back in college and seminary days, I would just write out my notes. And that was how I would study. There's something about the act of writing it out
Yes.
that drills it into the brain, helps you
Yes.
remember it better.
And they've done studies on that now that will say that your shorthand notes can be more effective than like long, really intense word-for-word notes. That if you just write down
An outline.
Yes, or just like little things that will help you remember the bigger picture, you will remember the bigger picture more clearly.
Wow. Reading out loud. Does
Reading
that
out
help?
loud, yeah, it does the same thing. So we read, and that helps our brains, and we learn, and we, like use all of our creative energies to think and see those things in our mind when we read. But when we read out loud, it activates another part of the brain. And so you're not just reading and having to think, but you're reading and having to speak. And that just activates more pieces of our brain. The more parts of your brain that you can get active, then the healthier you are keeping your brain and the better your memory is going to be.
Close to that is telling stories.
Yes.
Just telling those. Well,
Yes.
I've interviewed some fascinating people on the podcast and heard some interesting stories, like the monkey had a gun.
Oh my goodness.
You
I haven't listened to that
you haven't heard
podcast.
that
Now
one.
I need to go back
You need
and
to go
listen
listen to that one. Yeah.
Yeah, telling our life stories, telling stories that we really enjoy. Again, there we are, we're talking about the fun things. But even telling some of those stories that might be a little more difficult or emotionally difficult for us to tell, when you can connect your emotions to the stories that you're telling, you remember it differently. So the more we can connect feelings to our stories, the better we can recall them later. One of the things that they've started to do with people that have been diagnosed in early stages of dementia is to talk about the steps of their day. They're just going to talk about that verbally. Here's all the different things I'm going to go and do throughout the course of my day. And you repeat that over and over. And as you repeat those things, they stay really stuck in your brain.
Oh,
and it helps us to recall them.
I need to remember that. Learning something new. We get to a certain age, we don't think we can learn anything new.
Yes, and there are a couple of pieces to that. Cognitive behavioral therapy is one of those things that has been found to help with your memory. And cognitive behavioral therapy is outlined so that you deal with the cognitive part, how we think, and then that will help to change the behavior. Well, people think that they can't change the way they think, but we can. And sometimes we need some help. Sometimes we need another person from the outside to come in and say, no, really, what if we thought about it in a different way? And then that will help you. But you can change the way you think, and then that can help you to change how you act or what you do. And so that thinking about, I don't know, all the things. What do I want to do today? What's fun? What has been good? What have I done to help somebody else or to, be positive today? That thinking can really change how we remember something.
Looking at things from a different direction. I think that's one of the problems in our culture today is people are ingrained in their mindset and are not willing to consider any other way of thinking about a topic.
And I think we really need to remember that we can learn something new. We can learn a new perspective. We can learn a new skill. We can, learn how to do some new activity. And I think that, and as long as we continue to learn, we continue to grow, and we can think about things more completely. Not necessarily that we have to think about them differently all the time, but we can think about things from all different perspectives and think about them differently. And the more we do that, the more we can connect with other people and help them too.
Mm-hmm. And it doesn't hurt to have a smile when you do connect with other people. We've talked a good bit about things we can do and being happy and trying new things. But are there some memory aids that we might put into practice?
Yes, absolutely. So well, we still do. We use ideas like mnemonic tools. So I remember as a kid, we used to watch a show called The Facts of Life. Mm-hmm. And it was a bunch of girls at a school, and they were all, learning in their private school that they were in. They were studying for a test one time, and one of the girls said that she needed to learn what the word scuba stood for.
Oh, yeah, it does. It's
a mnemonic device. Yes, self-contained underwater breathing apparatus. And I can tell you that because I watched the show when I was like 12.
And it's stuck in your brain.
And it's stuck. And that mnemonic device that somebody else used to learn that on a, pretend show now is stuck in my brain forever. There's another one from that same show. She was learning about the different symbols in the periodic table, the elements. And AU is for gold. And she said, "Hey, you, give me back my gold watch." And so now...
little things like that.
Little things like that. And it's just stuck. And those things will stick in your brain for a long time. So any way that you can connect a picture or a story...
I heard someone say the other day, I really thought at my age I would not have to be singing the alphabet song to remember...
The alphabet.
But the songs, I remember learning the books of the Bible... Genesis, Sex. Yeah. I'm not going to sing it, but I could and get all the way at least to 1st and 2nd Samuel.
And music does that for our brains too. It helps us in so many different ways, whether we're playing music or listening to music or singing. It incorporates different activities into our brain that help us remember and learn, and music always brings about powerful emotions too, and it can... Oh,
I had not... That just brought back to mind. Music does. You can remember the lyrics. My wife tells me I can remember the lyrics to every 1970 song. Mm-hmm. But someone also observed that you ask the typical American to recite the preamble to the Constitution. They learned it in middle school. They couldn't recite it now, but if you tell them, "Come and listen to my story about a man named Jed," they will finish that.
Yes, they know that.
The poor mountaineer barely kept his family fed. I guess music and poetry, poetry and music, the things that we have hidden in our hearts. Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that we don't even know we have hidden there until we try to recall them.
I have often, on the spur of the moment, a Bible verse comes to mind, and when it comes out in the King James Version, I know it's because I learned it as a child, because that was the version I used in 5th, 6th, 7th grade memorizing Scripture. And thy word have I hid in my heart that I might not sin against thee. And it's true, you hid that word in there. And
we teach children to do that in ways that are going to be easy for them to remember, and then we forget to do that as adults.
we forget so many things.
I think that's probably one of the reasons it's important to stay connected with lots of different people and different ages. We learn so much from each other, and sometimes we get stuck in our one group of friends or the one group of people that we spend time with. It's really important.
I guess since retirement, for some reason, I have just enjoyed meeting all manner of new people, and it does change your way of thinking, and helps you to be. I don't know that it helps you remember, but as you said, if you got a smile on your face and you're happy, you're more likely to remember.
Right. It just hits your heart differently.
I think there was one more question I wanted to ask you.
And you can't remember.
I cannot for the life of me remember
now.
it. I can't remember how we were going to close this conversation. Just with a long, uncomfortable pause
that neither of us can remember.
That happens in life.
So
if someone is struggling with serious memory issues, is there a time where you perhaps should seek medical advice or seek a specialist?
Definitely. And I think that listening to our bodies is really important. Listening to your doctor is really important. Having a doctor that will listen to you is really important. And I think that as we try to stay connected with both things that help us medically and physically, that kind of thing, but also things that help our emotions and our thoughts and our feelings. Those things are important, not just for your happiness, your joy, but for your memory, and then ultimately your quality of life. If you notice that you're struggling, there are a lot of different things that can help, medications that can help, supplements that can help, but that's an important conversation to have with your doctor, and definitely important to continue to talk to medical professionals about all of that.
All right. Well, Mercedes, memory is important. You've given us a lot to think about if we can only remember it. If not, we've got it on the podcast. We can play it over again.
And over again.
And then take notes from it.
Right,
write it down.
We know.
Smile as we're writing it down. I appreciate you taking time to visit, and look forward to sharing this information with some of our listeners.
I love this because it is a story, and we're telling stories that encourage other people to tell more stories. And then we learn more about each other, and we learn more about how to live life well, and that's just good stuff.
That's very well said. You should start a podcast. Okay. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for listening to Life in LA. Feel free to contact us at steveford@gmail.com if you have a suggestion for a future topic. And as always, tell others about this podcast and share it on your favorite social media. You've been listening to Life in LA, a production of Steve Ford Photography.